It is now my great honor to introduce this year's Weinberg College Convocation speaker, Cody Keenan. Cody Keenan has been a speechwriter for President Barack Obama for more than a decade, rising from a campaign intern in Chicago to director of speechwriting at the White House. Through times of challenge and change, Cody has helped President Obama craft remarks on every topic for every audience, from tiny backyards in Iowa to the biggest stadiums of the country, from a sermon in Selma to his farewell address. Over 8 years in the White House, their collaborations were compared to the works of Abraham Lincoln, described as the "I have a dream" speech for the 21st century, and categorized even by prominent Republicans as, quote, speeches that every child should read in school. A 2002 graduate of Northwestern University's Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences and Harvard University, Cody's passion for public service was sharpened as a young aide to the legendary Senator Edward M. Kennedy. In 2014, Northwestern honored Cody with its Emerging Leader Award, presented to a top alumnus under the age of 35. And the Sigma Chi International Fraternity recognized him with its significant SIG Award. In 2015, Cody's commencement address at New York University's Robert F. Wagner School of Public Service was highlighted by the New York Times and the Washington Post as one of the year's best. And in 2017, CNN's critically acclaimed documentary, The End, highlighted Cody as one of the central characters in the White House. He's been described as the Springsteen of Obama's White House. Not quite sure what that means. And his wife, Kristen, shares his surprise that he was named by British GQ as one of the, quote, 35 coolest men under 38 and a half. In January 2017, after 36 years of hopeful waiting, Cody finally got the chance to write his dream speech, one in which President Obama welcomed the world champion Chicago Cubs to the White House. Today, Cody serves as Barack Obama's collaborator on his upcoming book and as his post-presidential speechwriter. Finally, to add to his list of accomplishments, Cody will join us next fall as distinguished lecturer in the Department of Political Science. Hear that, GQ. Please join me in welcoming Cody Keenan back to Northwestern and Weinberg College.
Go you! Go you! Well done. This is cool. I was thinking the last time I was standing probably right on this spot was 2000, and we had just beat Michigan 54-51. In a slugfest so crazy that even 10 years later, Sports Illustrated called it one of the 10 best games of the decade. Now, today, of course, our football program averages 9 wins a year and has the #1 graduation rate in all of college football. But you got to keep in mind that back then we hadn't really known good football for long, so we stormed the field like lunatics and decided we were going to lake the posts. We were going to tear them down, march them right down Central Street, and just toss them in. After about 10 minutes of effort, they were just kind of leaning sadly. I remember one of the guys hanging on top started yelling, "Where are the engineers?" And someone yelled back, "They're all in the library." So for hitting the books more than hitting the weights, congratulations to the class of 2018. To the parents, grandparents, high school buddies, everyone who helped raise us, thank you very much. This is your day too. Thank you to David Weinberg, Lynn Hopton Davis, Dean Randolph, my future colleagues at Weinberg for having me back today. But I really am excited to spend this day with you. Northwestern gets better every year. You know, like the dean said, we The Cubs weren't world champions when I was here. We didn't have all those gleaming new buildings on the lake. We didn't have cell phones. The MP3 player I took to SPAC held 15 songs. Swiping right meant literally pushing somebody out of the way so you could talk to a girl or a guy at a bar. And the bar where we did that was this grimy place called The Keg, which is now an artisanal sausage bar. We had no social media, but we did have Primal Scream. Now, parents and guests, this is a tradition where at 9 p.m. the night before finals week, every student on campus, no matter where they are, screams as loudly and incoherently as they can. That's right, Northwestern invented Twitter. But it's been 16 years since I was sitting in these seats. And as Dean Randolph said, for 11 of those years, I've been a speechwriter for Barack Obama. And when I told him I was coming to speak this weekend, he said two things. One was to say, good luck and go Cats. And because he's a fiercely competitive guy, he also leaned in and said, you know, I did that 12 years ago. But over the years, I abused my position for him a couple times. Once was to get him to appear at Dance Marathon in 2014. Another time was to get him to come speak on campus that fall. And you're welcome. And coming back here with him was really one of the great moments of my life. You know, we landed on the lake Phil and Marine One. I saw a lot of you guys out in front of the library in Norris. And as we drove down Sheridan, I pointed out Sigma Chi and Deering and Tech. And I love this school. I loved my time here. That's why I'm so excited to be coming back to teach a course at Weinberg this fall. But my guess is today you're more concerned with how I got from there to here. And I know this because I talk with so many students, I've talked to some of you, who worry that one wrong decision right now at 21 or 22 will somehow make or break your entire career trajectory. Well, I've come back from the future to tell you to chill. I know some of you have your job lined up and your path laid out, and that's admirable and annoying. She knows. When I was where you are, I didn't know what was next, let alone what to do with my life. After commencement, I've moved back in with my parents. I love you, Dad. And by the time homecoming rolled around, I was still jobless. But then something happened to me that I hope will happen to all of you pretty soon. A wildcat gave me a push. It was a wildcat tailgating out in that parking lot who pulled me aside and said, quit feeling sorry for yourself and move to Washington. And it was a wildcat who gave me a place to crash with 5 other guys and girls when I got there. And unfortunately, I didn't know any wildcats in politics, but I figured I went to a good school. I'd seen every episode of The West Wing. Let's do this. By the way, I'm often asked which show is most like the White House. And the answer for us was somewhere between The West Wing and Veep. You know, we were idealists who did our best, made some mistakes, but genuinely liked each other. This administration is House of Cards, but every single character is Jonah from Veep. Anyway, so I get to Washington, and after several failed interviews and unanswered resumes, I realized that my degree in politics didn't impress anybody with decades in politics. I see you, poli-sci, the story gets better, don't worry. So I took an unpaid internship in the Senate, where I was one of dozens of interns assigned to a windowless mailroom, doing the gruntiest of grunt work, making copies, walking the senator's dog, giving Capitol tours where I made up some tales about haunted dungeons. If you've been telling people for years that you've seen the haunted Capitol dungeons, I really am very sorry. But I threw myself into it, worked hard, learned. After a few months, I was hired to answer the phones for the princely sum of $18,000 a year. And over a few years, I slowly climbed the ranks. I went to the Democratic National Convention in 2004 when a young state senator introduced himself to the country. And here was somebody who saw politics the way I wanted to, as an imperfect but noble endeavor, where together we can come together and do great things that we can't do on our own. And I must have talked about that speech a lot, because right around then is when I got my real shot. One day, my overworked boss poked his head around the corner and said, "Hey, can you write a speech?" And at that point, I'd never considered being a speechwriter, but I lied and said, "Yeah, totally." And I stayed up all night long panicking my way through it. But that one led to a few more, and eventually, A colleague connected me with Senator Obama's chief speechwriter, someone you may know better as the host of Pod Save America, Jon Favreau. Man, the presidential campaign had just started. He was desperate for help, and suddenly I was an intern all over again, back in Chicago this time. And again, I threw myself into it, doing whatever the job required, writing anything, no matter how small. What I lacked in skill, I tried to make up with in heart. I studied people who'd been doing it longer. We won that election, we went to the White House, I moved into a West Wing office with John, but I never stopped working my ass off so that when he finally moved on and Obama had to choose a new chief speechwriter, I was the only logical choice. Now, for all those all-nighters, the truth is I've been extraordinarily lucky in my career. And anybody who tells you otherwise, any successful person who says they haven't had any luck play into it is lying to your face. But I do have two pieces of advice that might raise your odds of getting that lucky break. First, don't blind yourself to opportunity by hunting for that one perfect needle in the haystack. Work hard, learn from the team around you, make your very presence bring out the best in them. That makes you a magnet. That needle comes to you. Now, it's not to say you can't succeed by being an insufferable jerk. There are lots of those in Washington. It's just that nobody likes them, and they're increasingly booed out of restaurants or under indictment. Second, don't bog yourself down with constant anticipation and expectation of what's coming next. Because when you do that, you rob yourself of all the unexpected joy along the journey. The problem with the pursuit only of money, power, and fame is that there's always going to be somebody with more of these things. It's a race that has no end. So worry less about what you want to be and worry more about what you want to do. That way, even if you never fully realize your ambitions, you'll still have done a little good work along the way that makes other people's lives better, that gives some meaning to yours. And besides, if you're in a rush to get to your dream job, you might just get it at 28 and find yourself back here in Ryan Field at 37, wondering if you've peaked. Terrified that you have no idea what you're going to do with the rest of your life. But it was precisely that exhausting, fulfilling 2,922 days in the White House that gave my career meaning, the work involved in it. It vindicated that belief, that younger belief I had in what politics could be. Yes, politics is messy and complicated and frustrating and disappointing. Trust me on this. I've raised a glass on the Truman balcony when we won health insurance for millions of Americans. And I've cried in the Rose Garden with parents whose kids were murdered in their classroom after Congress caved to the NRA. But we went into the whole enterprise with a boss who told us from the start that our efforts would never be perfect and didn't have to be. That all we could do was our best to take up the work of others before us, to advance it as far as we could for as many people as we could, and then hand it off to a new generation. That's the story of this country. The biggest idea this world has ever had. And keeping that going depends on all of you. I saw something some months ago that got me thinking about this. You know, we've had all these massive marches the past few years, the women's marches, the March for Science, the March for Our Lives. Seas of people showing us what democracy can look and feel like. And one of the things you notice at these marches is everybody keeps trying to outdo one another with clever signs. Where are the scientists? Hands up. You guys have the best signs by far. And we are all counting on you to save us. But I've seen this one sign a couple times now that really grates on me. And it said, if Hillary were president, we'd all be at brunch right now. Now I want you to take the name out of that for a second, take the partisan aspect out of that for a second, and think about what that sign said. It said, if the election went my way, I wouldn't be here. It suggested that we only need to care about what happens in this country when our own narrow interests are at stake. And I wanted to ask that person if they'd been enjoying their brunch the last 8 years. Because people who've been fighting for things like better schools, a cleaner planet, equal pay, equal justice, more people with health insurance, fewer assault weapons in classrooms, cheaper student loans, not getting deported from the only country you've ever known, these people aren't spending their Sundays drinking bottomless mimosas. We are not supposed to take off 4 years or 8 years every time our preferred candidate wins. It's like saying, I got into Northwestern. I don't have to do any work for the next 4 years. Of course you do, except for that guy. And I know you did because those goalposts are still in the earth and not in the lake. The work of America isn't limited to people who work in politics. Wherever your next step takes you, med school, law school, the classroom, a lab, the NFL, this country depends on all of us. Reading the news, knowing the issues, voting in every election, being alive to one another's struggles, working to shorten that walk that other people have to make to a stage like this, believing in our ability to make a difference. And I know that can be hard. I know that idealism can be hard. To be an idealist, to open yourself up to the possibilities of what we can do together, that's never an easy thing. It's easier when you're young, when you're still consumed with the idea that you can make things better, when you haven't yet been forced into life's compromises or figured out that the system is designed to exhaust your resolve and your passion. And the cynics, man, they're everywhere. You're going to run into them everywhere. They'll tell you that idealism is naive, that to expect something better is just blind faith. But there's a faith involved in cynicism, too. It's the faith that everybody's crooked, that everybody's in it for themselves, that at best, the system is indifferent to your demands, and at worst, it's incapable of doing anything serious about them. And I know there's evidence for that. I get cynical, too, when I see ice caps melting faster, and bulletproof backpacks passed off as a serious solution, and kids ripped from their mom at the border, and the people in charge either passing the buck or sticking it back into their pocket. It is safer to be cynical. If you put your armor up, you're never going to get let down. But when you feel that way, I want you to look to our history. I want you to look to the trajectory of this country. I want to look to something that happened in your own life that reminds you of what possibility is, and I want you to grab onto it and never let go. Mine was the 10 most hopeful days that I ever saw in politics. And they began in the darkest way imaginable, a mass shooting, racially motivated, in the basement of a Charleston church. It was something that could have reopened all kinds of wounds and set fire to all sorts of recrimination. Then something different happened. The families of the victims forgave the killer in public. And that act of grace and good faith made space for a refreshingly honest and mature public debate on what that flag meant for so many people, the Confederate flag. And that, in turn, made it possible for South Carolina lawmakers to vote to bring that flag down over the South Carolina State House. Meanwhile, the next day, the Supreme Court upheld the right to health care. And the day after that, unlocked a right to marriage equality in America. And on the 10th day, as I was working on the 10th speech of that week, a president who was living this change with all of us looked down at me and said, "If it feels right, I might sing it." He led the country in a chorus of Amazing Grace. And as the sun went down on Washington, the White House lit up with all the colors of the rainbow. That was 3 years ago, this week. That was just 3 years ago this week. But here's the important thing. None of it happened because of what we did in 1 week, or what we did in one presidency, or even what we did in one generation. It happened because people chose to be decent and big-hearted and empathetic. It happened because people chose not only to protect their own rights, but to look out for the rights of others, to care not only about their own children, but to care about each other's children and grandchildren and children not yet born. It happened because countless Americans, usually young Americans, demanded something more from their country and pushed relentlessly to change hearts and minds and laws until that arc of history bent. People who took nothing for granted, who never gave up, who never let go, even when sometimes that boulder you've been pushing uphill slips and you got to take a breath, go back down and get it. It happened because of the hard work of idealists. To be an idealist, it's not the simplistic belief that things will get better. It's the conviction that with effort, things can get better. It's understanding the world as it is and fighting for the world as it should be anyway. And there is joy to be found in that struggle. So get involved as you march out of here. Get engaged. You're going to find that there really is a bigger reservoir of goodness in this country than you suspect. And all of you have to be a part of amplifying that right now. Don't wait for somebody else to do it, because that person might be waiting for you. To paraphrase the motto of this university, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest and just and pure and lovely and of good report, don't just think on these things, act on these things. Do your thing, wherever it takes you, with humor and compassion and justice and inspiration and mischief and hope. Hope is subversive right now. Go spread it anyway. People will follow you. People will join you. And everybody here who already believes in you is rooting for you more than you know. Go get them, class of 2018. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, Cody.